Hey everybody, it is Marley K. Hope everybody is doing well. Happy Monday. I'm coming to you today because I am doing a new series and it's going to be called the Anti-Black Report. And the report basically is going to be capturing a couple of activities that are important that Black people should be aware of, but it's usually something that's coded, um, usually tied to politics or some type of agenda, and that either isn't being covered by mainstream media. It's quite controversial, but it definitely impacts Black people. So today is going to be my first anti-Black agenda report, and I'm going to be talking about um, the Disney story where uh, an African American woman has been inserting queerness into anything that she could um, for Disney. And then Disney and Florida are actually having this huge clash right now because of their new, um, they call it Don't Say Gay bill, but that's not actually the name of the bill. But I'm going to get into that story. And then I want to talk about the story in the New York Post about how black black women need to look outside of their race for a mate. And that ties into the ongoing saga of everybody trying to decouple Black people and basically leave Black men out on an island all to themselves. And so there is an agenda, and we've talked about it before if you've seen some of my other videos. There's an erasure of Black people going on, and white supremacy, white people in general. Their numbers are decreasing. They're not having children as quickly as other groups, and so they are losing power and dying out. And so the goal is to try to get anybody and everybody they can to boost their numbers. And so while, people like us may be like, oh, we see the agenda, a lot of people do not see the agenda. They don't see anything wrong with it. And they also um, are not really paying attention to their children. And what I want to talk about today and why it's so important is the Disney story um, basically talks about how these big corporations have agendas to get into the minds of our children. And um, I'm going to play this story for you in a bit. But let me share my screen so I can share the first story with you. And that story is about the Black women needing to marry more Black men. All right. Okay, so this story is by Ralph Richard Banks, who apparently is instigator, and I don't know what his agenda is. He must be a surrogate for the Democratic Party, looking to shore up the Black vote and rally Black women. So this is one of those pieces, and it's an opinion piece. But his piece starts off as why Black women should consider marrying white men. And I will go over some statistics with you. I'll put some statistics in the description. But one of the issues is that there has been this long study of how Black women have been single, or they tend to stay single longer, and they tie it to, pieces like this will tie it into socioeconomic status. They don't really talk about the other issues tied to the reasons that a lot of Black women are single. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their income or their educational attainment. level. Sometimes it's a preference. Sometimes women just don't want to be bothered, or they've grown up in um, environments where men have not been valued, and women have basically been by themselves. They've done everything by themselves. They raised the children by themselves. They didn't have any men around. Grandma didn't have a man. Mama didn't have a man. Aunties didn't have a man. It was just women. And so these women have found um, support in each other, but they haven't really, because of their own, bad experiences, bad marriages or whatever, their relationships didn't work out. So they have conveyed this anti-man, black man vibe to their offspring. And so you'll have, we have a lot of women, and I know, a lot of women. I've talked to women in the past. I have friends and professional colleagues who are single black women. They've never been married, don't have any children, don't have any good prospects, and they have an air about them. They'll say stuff like, well, there are no black men checking for me. Well, why is that? What are you exuding that a black man wouldn't check for you? And they were like, well, when I'm in these spaces, they don't find me interesting, or so on and so forth. And I'm like, there's always um, more than one side to a story, and I just tend to try to get to know the people. And if you listen to people and you watch them and see how they engage with women versus men, a lot of times it's revealing to you. So this story is basically to shore up the um, you know black women in the same socioeconomic status as you know Vice President Kamala Harris and Ketanji Brown Jackson. So the story starts off to say two of the most powerful positions in the United States government will soon be held for the first time by black women, Kamala Harris and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Um, I don't, you to say that those positions are powerful is, I feel like a reach. I mean, you're on the Supreme Court, but who's, talking about how powerful anybody on the Supreme Court is? So, to start off the story like that, it's almost as if, they are trying to appeal to the people who, or to the women who enjoy power, who love power, or who aspire to achieve those types of things. I'm not saying that those things are bad. I'm not saying that those things are um, not appropriate or proper. I'm just saying that though that's not all that we are. And to focus on just those, power, that's a um, a dog whistle for certain types of black women, and it's also a dog whistle for white people who like certain types of white people. I'm sorry, certain types of black people. So the article goes on to say, Harris, as we all know, is the Vice President of the United States, and Ketanji Brown Jackson could soon become a Supreme Court justice. But Harris and Jackson also share a personal attribute that is equally noteworthy. Each has a white husband. And that is the thing. We've had a conversation about that previously. When all the nominees were nominated, all of the nominees pretty much had white husbands. And so that was clearly a characteristic of those types of women in those spaces. And why is that? Because there are black judges, there are black lawyers, there are black, lots of different types of men in those spaces. They may not go to Harvard, but it's not to say that there are not black men. What is it about these black women who are in these spaces that check only for white men? And sometimes, you have to look at the woman and her background to determine why this is the case. And I'm not saying anything, I'm not opposed to interracial dating or marriage. People can do whatever they want to do, but when we talk about the bigger picture of white supremacy and how white supremacy grooms its tools, how they use certain people, how they check for certain people, how they embrace and pull up certain types of people. This black woman being associated with married to white men having biracial children, if they have children at all, is a characteristic that cannot be ignored. So we need to, we were concerned about it. We have had discussions about it, even before Ketanji Brown Jackson's, nomination. Black people know this. So it's not like a secret. What is obvious and what most people haven't realized is that, this has been going on forever. And so now all of a sudden it's, these pics are almost like they were mocking us, or like it's a form of disrespect, I guess you could say. They're not hiding what they're doing anymore. And so because they're not hiding what they're doing, we have an opportunity to see how they think, how they respect us, who they respect. And so the fact that they would pick a black woman is one thing, just pick a black person. But, the fact that these nominees have white husbands, it is to send a signal. It is to plant a seed, and it is to expound on an agenda that white supremacy has in order to, you know, get us to help them keep their numbers up or get their numbers back up. So if we come to them and they have children, they can say we have white children. The children don't have to be black, because now the lines are blurred. Race is ambiguous. You could be a white Hispanic. What is that? You could be Jewish and white and Jewish, and what is that? Everybody have these honorary statuses, and they're honorary until they decide to take them back from you. So, here they're allowing or asking black women to consider white men because they need us. If they weren't inviting us before, in all the years that I've been alive, I've never seen an open recruitment for hooking up or partnering with white people the way that I've seen over the last, say, 3 years. It's in advertisements, it's in commercials on TV, it's on social media, it's in movies. Like, there's no place, music videos, there's hardly any place you can go without a interracial couple where it's a primarily black women with white men. So there's a message being sent, and it's not being sent by us. It's being sent by the dominant society, and they are planting seeds and wanting us to help them save themselves. So that is the message to take away from here. So let me get back to the article. The effects of racism have left well-educated black women with a paucity of black male partners. According to the Brookings Institute data, black men are less likely than black women to have completed high school and 50% less likely to have attained a 4-year college degree. Yet, despite the shortage of suitable black partners, black women have also been the least likely of any minority group to marry outside of their race, according to data from the Pew Research Center, which I find this part interesting because they always say believe black women, trust black women. If black women say, damn it, we don't have time for Chad and Bob and Mr. Charlie's bullshit, we prefer to be by ourselves if we can't have a black partner. This is almost saying like we're doing something wrong because we choose to be by ourselves instead of deal with white supremacy. Because 9 times out of 10, when you marry somebody outside of your race, if they're white, they probably are racist. They don't even realize the ways that they are racist. They just know they're attracted to you, they like you, But when it comes down to the everyday nitty gritty of living this life in black skin, doing what we do, enduring what we endure, but white people don't know. And if you're a black woman and you're a wise black woman, you're like, I don't have time to teach somebody that somebody white is committing a microaggression against me. I don't have time or the desire to teach somebody, you know, I'm experiencing racism. How come you didn't say anything? How come you didn't defend me? Black women don't want to do that. Um, when it comes to a black man being with a white woman, it's totally different. Um, you're not equal they're not, in my opinion, they're not equal in their relationship either. But because it's a white woman, the dynamic is different. And while the white woman may have to deal with um, some racism because she picked a white partner, she's not going to have to deal with the same thing that black women have to deal with from marrying outside of her race. So, black women, who choose that for themselves, they have all types of horror stories. But there are a lot of us black women who are not choosing that for ourselves. We don't want that for ourselves. We're not interested in dealing with Mr. Charlie's bullshit, Mr. Charlie's family. We don't want to deal with the looks you get when you go to places. We don't want to deal with the issues that come with having biracial children. Just don't want that. So, you know, being the least likely of any minority group to marry outside of our race also plays into a role, plays, to yeah, other women and other racial groups do marry outside of their race, but they're more likely to be accepted. A Hispanic woman can become white. An Asian woman, she can become white. A Jewish woman, she can become white. Everybody can become white except for us. So, it's just uh, to me a distasteful article, period. But let me get back to it. Stop putting my commentary in here. Um, Rather than partner with men of other races, many heterosexual black women either don't marry black men with whom they are not especially well matched. These mismatched relationships contribute to African Americans having the highest divorce rate of any racial group. In fact, black women are the only demographic to have a higher divorce rate than marriage rate. A bit more than a decade ago, I published a book, Is Marriage for White People, that examined the decline in marriage across American society, and especially among African Americans, and focused in particular on the predicament of black women. The book raises the possibility that black women like Harris and Brown Jackson would do well to open themselves to partnering with men who are not black. After all, black men appear to have no problem marrying out. The same Pew report revealed they are twice as likely as black women to have a non-black spouse. We don't care. We don't care. We don't care. People can marry whoever they want to marry. Nobody's wanted to marry Mr. Charlie. They're not marrying Mr. Charlie, period. There's a reason black women don't marry white men, and we don't need somebody corralling us, telling us to do it. There's an agenda, and it's not for our benefit. So nobody cared. We was over here single, minding our own business, at home, living life, and now all of a sudden, in election year, black women need to marry and partner with white men. Whatever. The author of this piece goes on to say, my book generated considerable controversy and exposed fissures within Black America. While younger Black people appeared more open to interracial relationships, a Black woman old enough to be my mother made a point of telling me I was a disgrace to my race. Yes, Grandma let him know she was not about that life and that you should not be promoting um, going outside of your culture. No other group is doing that. Is there a writer saying to Asian women, y'all should go find any man except for Asian man. No. The Asian people believe in not mixing up. And if a woman does mix up, you know what she better have? She better have a man that's got some type of connection to some type of government benefit so that the whole family can benefit from. Whether it's the military, whether he works for the State Department, whether he's some type of contractor, some shit that they can get their hands on and get a benefit from. Same with Latin American women, same with any other type of women, Caribbean, African, everybody does the same thing. So marriage is not always about, um, just looking for a partner, because I know plenty of stories. I have a friend that works for the State Department, and she talks about all the time about how these women have this whole system where they marry these men. As soon as they get married, they start being problematic. They don't like the man. They get divorced. Guess what? They got a green card. They got benefits. They have hurry up and have a baby. So they have a child that's entitled to citizenship, so they can use that if all else fails. So there is a um, reason that a lot of other women marry outside of their race. They do the same thing that white women do, but they're not talked about in a way that we are talked about. It's almost as if we have standards and morals when it comes to fighting white supremacy, and we don't want to marry someone that, psychologically is like your oppressor. So when you think about it, these other groups don't have any issue with white supremacy. As long as it benefits them, they'll take whatever punishment, they'll take the berating, they'll take the disrespect, whatever, as long as they get to live good or live comfortably or have whatever benefit they feel um, they need in order to survive, or whatever benefit that benefits their entire family. Because usually if you marry somebody outside of your race, especially if they're not white, you're not marrying them, you're really marrying their entire family. So I want to talk about the critics here. um, The most significant fissure was between black men and women. While some black women were made uncomfortable by the book and the way it put them in the spotlight, many others embraced it as a message of empowerment. That was a message that not all black men wanted to hear. At one of my book talks in DC, I worried a fight would break out between a young black woman who asserted her right to choose whatever type of man she wanted, and an older black man who condemned such sentiments as betraying the race. Other critics, including some black women, contend that white racism precluded black women from finding non-black partners, and this convinced black women that they cannot or should not partner with a non-black man, even if the alternative was remaining unpartnered or in a bad relationship. As a result, many black women feel that they should marry down before they marry out. And I, for one, agree with the sentiment. Just because, and the piece talked about, you know, racism is everywhere. Everybody is racist. And I don't have the energy or the time to deal with everybody else's racism. I'd rather have a partner that understands the same, we on the same page, and the other thing is there are all these other um, people of color dynamics of racism that black women and black people have to endure. Like, everybody is anti-black. And so you're saying, this article is talking about marrying outside of the race as if black men are bad without taking into consideration what types of men do black women have to pick from. And then, what do we endure? It's like easy to say, oh yeah, you should go get a white man, but then get a white man to do what? Train him how to not be racist to you or be offensive to your family. Because yeah, you may like him and love him and sleep with him, but you got to take him to grandma. Grandma may not like that, or you got to take him to daddy, and daddy may have issues with white men because white men have been a source of strife in his life forever. So, when you partner up, you're partnering with somebody who's going to be a part of your family. And so, a lot of times people will be like, oh, I like Chad, but they don't think about bringing Chad to the cookout and how people are going to react. So, this article, I feel as though it is highlighting um, is highlighting a real issue in our community, but it's not really addressing the issues, because just because you have a good job and education doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good mate. There are a lot of sisters who got issues. A lot of sisters got daddy issues, never had therapy. A lot of black women never grew up with any man, so they don't know how to treat a man. Only time they've ever heard a man discussed is in a negative way. Or, if you grew up like I did, my mother was, the best way to say it is a hot ass mess. And, she did not do right by us. And, I can recall her doing all kinds of stuff, like sending the police to my dad's wedding, to the church on the wedding day for just have him served for child support. Just evil, because she had connections with um, an attorney who had connections to the judge, who had connections to police. Um, just so many bad, experiences. But I did not, fortunately, I was always a free thinker and a different type of person, and I knew that what my mother was doing was wrong. And so I did not fault my father. And in fact, the reason that my parents were divorced was because of my mother. My mother cheated on my father, and she tried to leave his house with all his stuff to go live with her husband. I'm sorry, not her husband, her lover. And somebody saw my furniture being moved, and my dad was at work. My dad worked two jobs. He came home and he just freaked out. And that was the end of um, the marriage. And I was probably 4 or 5. I don't know, I was in kindergarten, first grade. And I had a brother, and my sister was a baby. And, um, it was really devastating. Our lives changed. We didn't have a mother because my parents got into it, and my dad, like, jumped on my mom, and yeah, he had to go to jail. Um, and I don't fault my father, because can you imagine, you work, you take care of this woman, she doesn't have to work, whatever, she's out cheating on you, you provide her a home, you give her everything she needs, you come home from work, you work at two jobs, you taking the kids to school, you're doing everything because you want to be the father that you didn't have, and then you find out you're married to a hoe. It's kind of problematic. And so my parents went through a lot of things, and I learned a lot about women and how women treat men, how women use the system against men, how women make life hard for men. And in turn, my dad, like, he was able to get remarried, but he and his wife had to put up with all the stuff that my mom dished out. And so as a result, it made his life with his wife a little more difficult. But she's a good woman. She stayed. Like, I love her. They've been married for like 40 years now. But, she could have been the type of woman who was like, I'm bouncing because I don't have time for this. And my dad had 3 kids, and she didn't have any children. And she took us in. She loved us. She still doesn't have any children. So she's always treated us like we were family, like we were her children. And so he married well. He married right the second time. But my mother was a piece of work. And so um, she had money, but she didn't have a degree. And she had jobs, um, but my dad made more money than she did. But she wasn't a good person. She was a mess. She was abused. She had been mistreated. And she grew up and treated her children and her husband the same way she was treated. Instead of breaking the cycle, she continued the cycle. And, right now to this day, we don't really have a relationship. But I'm saying all this to say that it doesn't matter what black women have. Sometimes black women are just problems. They grew up in black households that were not affirming for black men. They grew up in places where they were told they didn't need men. They were, put on pedestals and treated like princesses, and they were told the prince was going to come and get them one day. And they walking around acting like princesses and waiting on a prince to come, and the brothers ain't looking for princesses. They're looking for, ride or die sisters. Um, people have baggage, and you have women that, don't want to deal with men who've been married or men who have children. Women have criteria, and, for better or worse, good or bad, it's a problem for them. It's a problem for the entire black community. And so I think we have unrealistic and unattainable standards that we try to keep. And they are harming, um, black women. So I don't know what to do about this except for I'm be one all day, every day. I think black women and black men need to work together, work our shit out, and get our community together. Going off and marrying outside of the community is not going to make black people better. It's just going to make you hate black people. That's all. That's all that is going to do. So, this piece about black women should consider marrying white men. It's at the end of the day, it's an agenda piece for white supremacy. Um, there's no reason in this climate to even have that conversation when we are dealing more and more with white men doing stuff to black people, including killing black women who are going on these dating sites and finding them. Um, and using them as kills, basically. Um, any woman who is considering that, it's like, to each his her own, but you really better know what you're doing. Um, Following up with articles like these, instead of trying to work and maybe compromise, because you may meet a nice, wealthy, educated white guy, but he may be a pervert. He may be a cheat. He may be something else. He may treat you good, give you a credit card, take you on trips. But he could be a Donald Trump or a Jeffrey Epstein. You don't know. So just because he's white doesn't mean he's going to be better. Just because he's white and wealthy doesn't mean he's going to take care of you. Um, if black women are that weak-minded to fall for a story like this, then they deserve whatever they get. If you look up and find you somebody good, then great, power to you. But I just don't appreciate the fact that these anti-black men pieces come out every election cycle. We have to deal with people degrading or berating black men. And so this is one of those pieces. It's that time, and I talked about that in January, how we were going to start seeing more and more pieces where, the media, the mainstream media, and Democrats, we're going to, and now even Republicans are doing it. They're going to be targeting black men. Black men are the whipping boards for both political parties. So I just want to call attention to it so that you will not fall for it and you understand what you're seeing. You're seeing two things. One is that you're seeing a uh, um, I guess, a way to widen America by recruiting black women to marry white men, even though the reason that the two can't be together is because white people socially engineered our situations to such an extent that they've made, life hard for black men, black males, period, black boys. So, you know, without taking all of that into consideration and just be like, oh, I'm going to be selfish and think about myself instead of fixing the problem and fighting the problem, which is white supremacy, which is white men. I don't know what else to say. I just don't know what else to say. I'm going to just move on to the next story because I just don't know what else to say except for, this is an agenda piece. One is to secure the black female vote for 2022 and 2024, mainly 2022, to get black women to see themselves as a Ketanji Brown Jackson, or to see themselves as a Vice President Kamala Harris, be a black woman and to attach yourself to a white man. And it is propaganda. It is how they use these different tools to get inside of our minds, because they've studied us. They know, we're easily moved by pictures and entertainment. So they've trained us and conditioned us to be this way. And so if you're a weak-minded person, or you do groupthink, or you can't think outside of the box, or you just like that because you're one of these new blacks, then this is going to be for you. But if you are a person who thinks deeply and intelligently, and you are able to read between the lines and see the messages, then you'll understand what this is all about. So the next story that I want to talk about is the story about the Disney executive producer who admitted that she inserts queerness wherever she could. So here in this story, it says Disney executive producer admits to gay agenda, adding queerness wherever she could. Um, So here in this article that's on Yahoo, it says during a staff meeting on Florida's recent enactment of the Parental Rights and Education Bill, an executive producer at Disney said she was advancing a not at all secret gay agenda to insert queerness into children's animation. Now, you tell me why children need to know about queerness, and why does Disney feel as though it is their job to insert that into children's programming? Just think about that for a minute. So here, Latoya Ravenel, who's a black woman, executive producer for Disney television animation, talked about how the studio's treatment of her progressive ideas defy her negative expectations of the company. In a video obtained by journalist Christopher Rufo, instead of vetoing her pitches for LGBT-friendly Easter eggs or overt references in her series, Disney gladly accepted and included them, and she claimed. So she's basically saying whatever she wanted to do to insert queerness into cartoons for kids, they actually approved it. And so she said, in my little pocket of proud family Disney TVA, the showrunners were super welcoming, not to my not at all secret gay agenda. I'm sorry, let me reread that. In my little pocket of proud family Disney TVA, the showrunners were super welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda, she said. Maybe it was that way in the past, but I guess something must have happened And then, like, all the momentum that I felt, that sense of I don't have to be afraid to have these two characters kiss in the background. I was just, wherever I could, adding queerness. No one stopped me, and no one was trying to stop me. She said that when she joined Disney, she assumed Disney would try to keep the LGBTQ element out of content for younger audiences, but she was pleasantly surprised. Now, why does anybody want to be passing that on to other people's children? Like, I don't understand um, the mindset behind this, but the fact that um, a black woman is doing it is extremely problematic. And the fact that I know black people consume more media than any other group in America. Our children watch more TV. We have more, our children have more unsupervised television and phone screen time. It's problematic. And the fact that it's Disney, everybody thinks that Disney and Disney Plus is good, but this is like so scary. I have an 8-year-old grandchild, and so now when my grandchild is around, I can't let my grandchild watch Disney, or I wouldn't let my child watch Disney, because I don't want my grandchild exposed to subject matter that I don't necessarily think she should be exposed to, or the same for my grandsons. Um, so here, um, I'm going to go on. She said, I love Disney's content. I grew up watching all the classics. They have been a huge informative part of my life. But at the same time, I worked at small studios most of my career, and I had heard whispers. I had heard things like, they won't let you show this in a Disney show. So I was a little sus when I started, but then my experience was baffling, the opposite of what I had heard, she said. So, here, I'm going to say Latoya is a rare and uniquely talented person who elevates everything she touches, and her creative sensibility spans stories for preschool kids, families, and adults. Meredith Roberts, Senior Vice President, General Manager, Television Animation at Disney Branded Television, told Deadline earlier this month. Raveno's leaked comments came out Tuesday, the day after the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Parental Rights and Education Bill, dubbed the Don't Say Gay Bill by critics, which prohibits the teaching of gender identity and sexual orientation to children in kindergarten through third grade. So basically, this reporter leaked this story and this video out because they were like, they didn't really necessarily approve of what this woman was doing. Disney's leadership condemned the legislation and attempted to lobby DeSantis to kill it, but he refused to budge. A group of California Disney employees staged a walkout last week to protest the measure, wearing rainbow colors. Oh my God. And we'll talk about rainbow when I'm done. Holding signs with pro-LGBTQ slogans and shouting "Say Gay" as they marched down the street. The governor slammed the company for its hypocrisy in pushing domestic social justice causes while conducting business in China with the blessing of the Chinese Communist Party, a regime notorious for human rights abuses relating to the Uyghur Muslims, Hong Kong, Tibet, etc. DeSantis told supporters in Boca Raton early this month that Florida's policies must be based on the best interest of Florida's citizens, not on musings of woke corporations. We already know, we talked about what woke is, and so woke is code for black. And I am going to play this video, if I can get it to play, for you. And I think Christopher Rufo posted this, so hold on a second.
I love Disney's content. I grew up watching, all of the classics. They have been a huge, informative part of my life. But at the same time, I worked at small studios most of my career, and I'd heard, you know, you can hear whispers. Like I'd heard things like, oh, you know, they won't let you show this at a Disney show, and I'm like, okay. So I was a little like sus when I started, but then my experience was bafflingly the opposite of what I had heard on my little pocket of, like, you know, Proud Family Disney TVA. The showrunners were super welcoming. Meredith Roberts and like our leadership over there has been so welcoming to like my like not at all secret gay agenda. And so like I feel like I felt like it was, I mean, like maybe it was that way in the past, but I guess like something must have happened in the last, like they're turning it around, they're going hard, and then all that like momentum that I felt, like that sense of I don't have to be afraid to like let's have these two characters kiss, let's in the background like I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to like the, if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud of them. But like I just was like, no one would stop me and no one was trying to stop me.
All right, so you see what I mean. So let me read this. The copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. So I'm inserting the copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. So, yeah. So, this is extremely problematic, and it is problematic because we didn't know.
Like I love Disney's content. I grew up watching, you know, all of the.
We didn't realize that you know, folks had an agenda. And, you know, I find it very scary that, you know, we don't know how long these people have been inserting these overtures in cartoons and Disney characters. I don't watch cartoons. My children are adults. My youngest son is 30, so it's been a long time. But I do recall when my kids were younger, like in middle school and high school, how vulgar some of the cartoons were, like Ren and Stimpy, South Park, and a couple of other cartoons that they used to watch. They were like really um, just not appropriate, like not like the cartoons that we were accustomed to. They were really edgy and sometimes inappropriate. Um, and thankfully, I was at the time going to church, and so I didn't allow my kids to watch a lot of that stuff. And I'm thankful that I did. My kids did not have cell phones. They did not have any of those things because, and I have sons, because they could have easily been persuaded by these agendas. Um, and you know why a black person would want to be inserting these things in um, you know, young children's cartoons without parents' permission, and knowing full well that parents are not going to be sitting watching the cartoons is really problematic. And so, you know, if you have Disney, I recommend getting rid of it. Because they're teaching your kids things that you may not necessarily agree with, and they are, if they put this message in, then God knows what else they'll put in. So you have to be responsible for your child's learning. You have to also protect your children from things that you may not be ready to discuss. Now, I'm not saying that you don't necessarily have to discuss anything LGBTQ, because children are you know, gonna find out about it eventually. But let that be your decision when you talk to your kids about sex or sexuality. Um, and if you believe in something like, you know, gender, I know there's this huge movement to remove pronouns and binary gender titling to appease the LGBTQ community. And note that everybody is not the same. Everybody in the LGBTQ community does not agree with the binary, non-binary, all the changes that these people are coming up with, but know that this is an agenda. This agenda is geared towards transhumanism. And if you don't really know what I'm talking about, I will include the link in the description about the transhumanism agenda and where it started and all this trans humanism. It came out of the LGBTQ community. So there's an agenda here. And while, again, just like with this other story, it will land on younger people. They are depending on younger people to pick up these messages and do what they want them to do. And so, I just wanted to bring this to you. You should be aware that this is a story, a real story about something that is happening in America with our children. And as Black people, we are the largest consumers of television and, just our buying power, period. So when you sit down and look at commercials and you're seeing all these same sex commercials, you're seeing all these rainbows, and even in stores, you go try to buy something for girls or children now, rainbows everywhere. I've never seen so many little children with rainbows in my life. And I used to work in the HIV industry, and I used to work for an HIV AIDS organization. So I know all about the symbols and the secret symbols and the ways that people use those symbols and colors to draw attention to themselves or to let other people know they are what I call in the family, or that they are, as Torian Rain says, they're in the academy. So when you wear rainbows and you have unicorns and all that stuff means something. And you see now little girls wearing rainbow headbands because they're taught to believe rainbows are pretty and innocent, and they represent love. Like, there's a whole language of symbols behind all of this, and our kids are being programmed with it. So by the time they get to middle school and high school, kids are confused. And so now everybody thinks they like everybody, and everybody, um, you know, people are just children are just confused. So it's up to you as parents and caretakers and grandparents, friends, relatives, uncles, aunts, to be mindful when you're around your young relatives and your young children. Ask questions. What are they watching? Sit down and watch TV with them. When you see stuff that's inappropriate, turn it off. If it's things that you don't agree with morally or religiously or whatever, address it. Don't just sit back and think kids will be kids and I'm just not going to be that type of parent, because your kids are being programmed. We are all being programmed every day. Even with this article about Black women should be considering white men, that is a programming tool. It's in the mainstream media. It's been shared on social media. We're having conversations about it. It is not anything innocent. It is there for a reason. Um, the same with this Disney story. Um, it's leaked because it's a political issue now. But had it not been tied to politics, we may not ever know this. We could, be going decades and not know that our children have been programmed. So, you know, just be mindful that there are agendas attacking us. And sometimes it's our own people. This article about why Black women should consider um, marrying white men. Richard Ralph Banks is a Black man. He's not white. You have a Black person saying that Black women need to marry outside of their race. Um, with this Disney story, Disney is a white-owned corporation, but you have a black woman talking about inserting stuff into cartoons and anywhere she could, and she didn't even have any remorse about it. She thought it was the best thing. Like, I don't even really understand. And the fact that it was a black woman that, did it and they set her up like that, it's like a big joke. So, um, black people have to be mindful. We got a lot of people that hate us, and that is why I named this report the anti-black hate report. Um, or the anti-black report, because we have to understand that a lot of the things that are happening now are happening because the dominant society, they don't like us and they don't respect us, and they have an agenda, and their agenda is not our agenda. And I keep saying that over and over again. We just have to consistently stay on point, understand what is happening. And for me, I don't watch a lot of television, but I will say that I will be more mindful after seeing the story. And I originally saw it on the Black Channel. Um, I just, I was shocked. I did not realize, but somebody brought it to my attention, so I'm going to share it with my viewers. And feel free to leave your feedback. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. Don't forget to hit the bell twice so that you will be notified anytime I upload new content. And I'm going to try to come to you twice a week. I'm only going to do stories like this once per week, because I tried not to watch so much television and get into so much news because it's depressing. But also, I try not to because, there's so many things that are distracting us. We as Black people, we have a lot of things distracting us. So, we have to pick and choose our battles. But I feel like, our children are something that we really don't pay attention to enough. And because of that, we are failing the next generation. Like, we know what we should and should not be doing, and we understand white supremacy and how it operates, but our children do not. So we have to teach our children about what is happening. We have to teach our children how to um, navigate these spaces where people are attacking them. Like, we're under constant attack. And so I just want everybody to know that, there is an agenda, and it's constant. It's concerned with our bodies, our physical bodies and our minds. They want to, program our children. They are trying to split up the black families. They want black men and black women to hate each other. They want black men to be by themselves. And because that's easy for, it makes it easier to do harm to black men. And so I feel like, if you are a pro-black person, or if you're watching and you're white and you're an ally, you have an obligation to understand what is happening, to counter it, because we have a right to love each other. We have a right to be together. We have a right to oppose whatever the dominant society wants for us. Our wants are not their wants, and we don't have the same agenda. Um, so looking at history and looking at the way things are going, it's not in our best interest to do anything that the dominant society says. If they say go left, you should go right if you're black, in that sense. That's, how I see things. But I just want you to be aware of what is happening. As we get closer to November, you're going to see, more of these types of shenanigans. So just be aware and know there's an agenda. You can counter it. If you're on social media, you can oppose it. You can tell, people about it, school people, because once you start breaking this stuff down and showing people what's happening. The dominant society of white supremacy, they have an agenda. They are trying to stay in power. They know their days are numbered. They know their numbers are dwindling. They are concerned about losing power, and they are concerned about retaliation, because that's what they think about. They know they've done so much to other people. If they lose power, they are afraid that people are going to treat them the way that they've treated other people, in particular black people. So their goal is to neutralize us as much as possible. If they can emasculate young black boys and make them gay, if they can distract young girls and make girls like girls, hey, those are people off the table they don't have to worry about, because you're going to be concerned about your sexuality. You're not going to be concerned about fighting white supremacy, because you're concerned about other stuff. When you are a black woman and you're educated and you're concerned about marriage, and you're, listening to this language about you need to, find a mate, and the mate needs to be white. That's a message. You need to be able to counter that, and anything else that comes out. Like, not saying that Christopher Rufo is a good person, um, but I will say, um, this is something that we need to be on top of with this Disney story. And shame on black people who engage in these types of activities on behalf of white supremacy. You are helping the transhumanism agenda, and when they're done with you, they're gonna break you, because that's what they always do. You have a shelf life, and once your shelf life is up, they break you. So, we shouldn't even be helping or collaborating or supporting anything that's going to maintain this system, because all it does is harm us. So be mindful, be one. Um, Happy Monday. Don't forget to like the video, share the page, and um, just be mindful of what's happening, because a lot of things are happening and we are not in control. We can control what we can control, but just make sure that you are actually um, paying attention to what is going on, because there are a lot of things happening, and they're not good. They're only going to get worse. So be one, people. Be one.